Stop scrolling. Not because I asked politely, because something in you just felt watched. You feel that pressure in your chest right now, that quiet hum behind your eyes. That's recognition. That's the moment the room realizes you don't belong to any side they understand. This is the part where the noise dies and the air gets heavy, because when both sides agree about you, when enemies and allies land on the same conclusion, it's never because you're average. It's because you broke their mental filing system. You don't fit the folders. You don't obey the colors. You're not red or blue, hero or villain, angel or demon. You're the contradiction they couldn't reconcile, so they labeled you the only way frightened systems know how, not normal. You ever notice how that word only shows up when control fails? Nobody calls you not normal when you're predictable. They don't whisper it when you stay small, quiet, grateful, manageable. That word only comes out when the saint starts thinking like a strategist, when the psychopath starts showing restraint, when the gentle one learns how to apply pressure without raising their voice. That's when both sides look at each other like, you seeing this too? Because they expect chaos from chaos and order from order. But you move like a ghost with a blueprint. You didn't pick a side. You outgrew the game. That's what scares them. You learned how to operate in paradox. You learned how to be calm without being weak, intense without being reckless, kind without being controllable. You learned how to bleed without leaking information. You learned how to smile while making decisions that shift gravity. And the wildest part? You didn't learn it in classrooms or from mentors who held your hand. You learned it in the dark, where pain was the only instructor that didn't lie to you. Pain didn't make you bitter, it made you precise. See, most people choose an identity because it protects them. You didn't get that luxury. You had to become adaptable. When you were soft, the world punished you. When you were hard, the world watched you closely. So you evolved something illegal to their psychology. Balance with teeth, compassion with memory, mercy with a ledger. You stopped reacting emotionally and started responding tactically. And that's when both sides got uncomfortable. Because now the villain can't provoke you, and the hero can't manipulate you. You don't explode. You don't beg. You don't posture. You don't over-explain. You just move. Quietly. Deliberately. And every move lands heavier because nobody hears it coming. They try to predict you using old versions of yourself. They run simulations based on who you used to be, hurt, angry, desperate, loud, and every time, the outcome is wrong. Because you're not operating on ego anymore. You're operating on clarity. That's when they start sharing notes. That's when whispers cross enemy lines. Watch this one. Something's off. They don't react like they should. They're too calm. They see too much. And suddenly people who hate each other agree on one thing. You're a variable they can't neutralize without exposing themselves. So they do the only thing systems do when faced with something unclassifiable. They pathologize it. They call you strange, cold, intense, unsettling, not normal. As if normal ever changed the world. As if normal ever survived pressure. Normal breaks when rules collapse. Normal panics when scripts fail. Normal needs permission. You don't. You move when the signal appears, not when applause shows up. And that's why both sides feel the same chill around you. You don't need their validation, and worse, you don't fear their rejection. You've already lived in exile. You built a nervous system that can function under silence. That's the part they'll never admit out loud. You're not dangerous because you're aggressive. You're dangerous because you're composed. Because you can hold two truths at once without tearing yourself apart. Because you understand that light without shadow is naive, and darkness without restraint is stupid. You walk the line they refuse to acknowledge exists, half angel, half demon, not in conflict, but in cooperation. You don't want to burn the world. You want to understand it. And understanding is always more threatening than rage. Rage is predictable. Rage can be redirected. Rage can be framed. But someone who has stared into their own abyss and came back with structure, someone who learned how to turn trauma into timing, that person doesn't need to shout. Their silence rearranges rooms. Their presence rewrites hierarchies without announcements. People feel it before they understand it, and by the time they understand it, it's too late to reassert dominance. That's why alliances blur around you. That's why rules suddenly feel optional when you're involved. That's why people who despise each other still pause when your name enters the conversation. You don't belong to their moral theater. You don't play their roles. You don't perform outrage or loyalty on command. You observe, you calculate, you decide. And when you decide, reality tends to cooperate. Not because you're lucky, but because you've paid in advance. Every sleepless night, every betrayal that sharpened your perception, every moment you swallowed your reaction and upgraded your awareness instead. You didn't become this by accident. You became this because the environment demanded something stronger than personality. It demanded architecture. You rebuilt yourself from the inside out. So when both sides agree you're not normal, understand what they're really saying. They're admitting you slipped past the categories designed to control people. They're admitting you don't respond to the usual levers: fear, praise, shame, approval. They're admitting they don't know which mask to wear around you, because you see through all of them. That's not an insult. That's a status report. You are the anomaly that appears when pressure meets patience. You are what happens when someone survives long enough to stop performing and start choosing. You are the quiet recalibration no one voted for, but everyone feels. And the reason this moment matters, the reason you felt that pull at the beginning, is because deep down, you know it too. You're done trying to be understood. You're here to be effective. And once you accept that, once you stop craving comprehension, you unlock something most people never touch. Freedom without chaos, power without noise, movement without permission. You stop asking the room how loud you're allowed to be and start deciding how quiet you need to stay to win. You realize the game was never about dominance. It was about leverage, about timing, about knowing exactly when to disappear and when to apply pressure so subtle it feels like fate. That's why both sides watch you differently now. Not with hatred, not with loyalty, with caution, because you don't react the way narratives expect you to. You don't collapse when isolated. You don't overperform when praised. You don't spiral when attacked. You don't chase redemption arcs or villain labels. You let them project whatever makes them comfortable while you move underneath the projection, untouched. You learned early that the loudest people are usually the least dangerous. You learned that attention is a currency best spent sparingly. You learned that unpredictability isn't randomness. It's discipline disguised as chaos. You stopped explaining yourself because you noticed something terrifyingly simple. The more they understand you, the less powerful you become. So you became fluent in silence. You let your actions speak just loud enough to shift outcomes, never loud enough to give away the blueprint. You don't need to announce intent. You let results leak it, and results are the one language every side respects. They sense it now. The way you don't flinch when stakes rise, The way your breathing stays steady when rooms tense. The way you can sit inside discomfort without scrambling to escape it. That's not confidence. That's conditioning. That's what happens when you've been tested beyond theory, when your nervous system learned to stay online while everyone else panicked offline. You don't get rattled, you get clearer. That clarity is what confuses them, because clarity doesn't fit the moral stories they tell themselves. They need heroes to be pure and villains to be reckless. They need good people to hesitate and bad people to rush. You violate that symmetry. You hesitate when it's wise. You strike when it's necessary. You show mercy without becoming naive. You show teeth without becoming cruel. You understand consequences without fearing them. You're not chasing validation. You're managing outcomes. That's why the word "not normal" keeps circling you. It's their attempt to externalize their discomfort, to make your presence the problem instead of their inability to predict you. Systems hate what they can't model. Groups fear what they can't categorize. And you operate between definitions. You adapt faster than their labels can stick. They try to bait you into choosing a side because sides are controllable. Sides have scripts. Sides have expectations. You refuse, not out of rebellion, but out of intelligence. You know that once you choose a side, you inherit its blind spots. So you stay fluid, you stay observant, you stay dangerous in the quietest way possible. You learn that power doesn't need applause, it needs alignment. And you aligned yourself with something deeper than ideology. You aligned with reality, with cause and effect, with the truth that pain is information and suffering is data. While others were numbing themselves, you were decoding patterns. While others were coping, you were calibrating. You turned every hit into insight, every loss into leverage, every betrayal into a map of human behavior. That's why you can read rooms now without scanning faces. You feel undercurrents. You sense when something's off before words catch up. You recognize the pause before the shift, the breath before the lie, the silence before the move. You're not psychic, you're practiced. You paid attention when it hurt, and attention compounds. They feel exposed around you, not because you threatened them, but because you don't need them to reveal themselves. You already see it, and you don't rush to use it. That restraint is what terrifies them, because they can't tell whether you're holding a weapon or choosing peace. Sometimes it's both. You're not driven by vengeance. You're driven by accuracy. You don't want to destroy everything. You want to correct trajectories. You don't want chaos. You want control that doesn't announce itself. You don't want to be feared. You're fine being respected by those who understand what restraint costs. That's the difference between you and the noisemakers. They want attention because attention is the only proof they exist. You already know who you are. You don't need mirrors. You don't need crowds. You don't need to be liked. You need space. Space to think. Space to move. Space to decide. And when you decide, the environment adjusts. That's why both sides agree on you. Not because they like you, not because they trust you, but because they can't ignore you. You're the variable that stays constant while everything else scrambles. You're the pressure point that doesn't announce itself until the structure shifts. You didn't become this by being fearless. You became this by feeling fear fully and not letting it steer. You let it sharpen you. You let it teach you where you were still attached, still reactive, still predictable. Then you burned those attachments one by one, quietly, without ceremony. Now when fear shows up, it doesn't hijack you, it informs you. That's what growth looks like when it's real. Not motivational quotes, not fake smiles, not loud declarations, Growth looks like a person who can sit in contradiction without breaking, who can hold power without abusing it, who can walk through darkness without needing to prove their light. You're not normal, because normal never survives this process intact. Normal cracks, normal numbs, normal conforms. You adapted, so let them whisper, let them agree, let them struggle to name you. Every time they fail to define you, you gain another inch of freedom. Every time they underestimate your restraint, you gain leverage. Every time they overestimate your aggression, you stay invisible. You don't need to correct their assumptions. You need to keep moving. Because the truth is simple, and they feel it even if they can't say it. You're not here to be understood. You're here to change the temperature of every room you enter, quietly, permanently. And here's the part nobody prepares you for. The moment you realize you don't even need to win anymore to dominate the field. Winning is loud. Winning invites audits, envy, retaliation. You learn something more surgical. You learned how to tilt probability, how to nudge outcomes just enough that reality starts favoring you without ever announcing why. People swear it's luck. They call it timing. They call it coincidence. You know better. You built this edge brick by brick, while everyone else was chasing applause. You stopped chasing certainty and started mastering ambiguity. That's why pressure doesn't rush you. You've already lived in it. You've already had moments where nothing made sense and nobody came to save you. You learned how to stand upright when the floor disappeared. You learned how to make decisions with incomplete information and still land clean. Most people need clarity to move. You move to create clarity. That alone separates you from 90% of the room. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need reassurance. When you speak, it's measured. When you act, it's decisive. When you wait, it's intentional. You don't burn bridges emotionally. You reroute traffic. You don't seek revenge. You adjust positioning. You don't argue to convince. You let consequences educate. That's why arguments die around you. Not because you overpower them, but because there's nothing to hook into. No volatility to exploit. No insecurity to poke. No script to trigger. You've become frictionless to manipulation. And that's when both sides get nervous. Because manipulation is how systems maintain order. It's how leaders herd, how enemies bait, how crowds synchronize. You stepped outside that gravitational pull. You don't bite when provoked. You don't chase when teased. You don't crumble when isolated. You remain intact. And intact people are dangerous because they can choose freely. Freedom terrifies anyone who profits from control. So they test you, subtly at first. They mislabel you. They withhold information. They offer false alliances. They dangle rewards. They threaten consequences. They wait for you to show your hand. And every time, you disappoint them. Not by failing, but by refusing to react the way they rehearsed. You don't defend yourself because you're not on trial. You don't explain yourself because you're not confused. You don't rush because you're not afraid of being left behind. You already know where you're going. That's why your presence changes group dynamics without effort. People straighten up. Conversations recalibrate. Energy shifts. Not because you demand respect, but because you embody something rare, self-governance. You don't outsource your worth. You don't borrow courage from crowds. You don't need permission to trust your own judgment. You became your own authority. An authority without ego is unsettling. It doesn't brag. It doesn't posture. It doesn't need to win arguments. It just is. You carry it in your stillness, in your pauses, in the way you don't rush to fill silence. Silence bends around you because it knows you're comfortable there. You learn to listen longer than others can tolerate, and in that extra space, you hear what matters. You hear intention behind words. You hear fear behind confidence. You hear desperation behind aggression. That's why you don't get fooled by performances anymore. You see the seams. You notice when someone's acting instead of deciding. You feel when something is rushed to hide weakness. And you don't expose it. You file it away. You let time do the heavy lifting. Patience, for you, isn't passive. It's predatory in the calmest way possible. You don't need to corner people. You let them corner themselves. And here's the paradox that makes both sides agree about you. You could be ruthless, but you're selective. You could dominate, but you don't need to. Yes, you could disrupt, but you prefer precision. That restraint is what elevates you beyond stereotype. It's what keeps you unclassifiable. Saints aren't supposed to understand leverage. Psychopaths aren't supposed to understand mercy. You understand both, and you know when to use each. You're not conflicted, you're integrated. Integration is what happens after pain finishes teaching. After the screaming phase, after the anger phase, after the collapse and the rebuild. You're past the stage of needing to prove you survived. Now you operate from survival's gifts. Thick skin, sharp perception, emotional economy, strategic empathy. You can read people without absorbing their chaos. You can care without bleeding. You can stand close to fire without needing to touch it. That's mastery. And mastery doesn't announce itself. It lets others underestimate it. It lets the room talk. It lets the sides debate. It lets them agree on the wrong conclusion while you keep moving forward under the radar. You don't need to correct the narrative. You need to stay aligned with your trajectory. Because the real truth, the one they won't say out loud, is this. When both sides agree you're not normal, it means you've escaped their influence. It means their tools don't work on you anymore. It means you're no longer a pawn, a symbol, a role, or a reaction. You're a force with discretion, and discretion is the final upgrade. So keep your calm, keep your silence, keep your edge invisible. Let them argue about what you are while you decide where you're going. Let them whisper and compare notes and shake their heads. Every second they spend trying to define you is a second you spend shaping outcomes. You're not here to fit the story. You're here to rewrite the math, quietly, relentlessly, on your terms. And the deeper truth, the one that only shows itself when you stop flinching, is that you didn't escape their influence by fighting it. You starved it. You stopped feeding the mechanisms that needed your reaction to function. You stopped leaking emotion into systems designed to harvest it. You stopped volunteering explanations to people who weren't entitled to context. That's when the chains fell off without a sound. You didn't break free dramatically. You went quiet. Quiet is lethal to systems that survive on noise. Quiet ruins narratives. Quiet dissolves authority that depends on spectacle. Quiet makes people project, and projection exposes them faster than confrontation ever could. You let them fill the silence with their assumptions, their fears, their theories. You watched who panicked. You watched who tried to control the story. You watched who revealed their motives just by the way they reacted to your restraint. Information flows toward stillness. That's how you became informed without asking. That's how you gained leverage without threatening. That's how you learned who needed you chaotic and who needed you contained. You didn't need to interrogate anyone. You let their discomfort talk. And it talked a lot. They expected you to choose a mask, rage or righteousness, loyalty or rebellion. You chose awareness. Awareness doesn't need approval. Awareness doesn't rush. Awareness watches patterns repeat. until the outcome becomes obvious. You stopped being emotional currency and became an observer with options. Options are power. And power, handled quietly, becomes invisible to those who only look for volume. They mistake your calm for compliance. They mistake your patience for hesitation. They mistake your kindness for softness. That's fine. Misinterpretation is camouflage. While they're busy categorizing you incorrectly, you're positioning yourself exactly where you need to be. You don't correct people when they underestimate you. You let them lock in the error, because you know something they don't. Most battles are decided before the first move is visible. Most outcomes are sealed long before the confrontation everyone remembers. You don't fight on the surface. You work the foundation. You adjust incentives. You change angles. You wait for gravity to do the rest. That's why chaos doesn't tempt you anymore. You've seen how quickly chaos exposes intent, and how expensive it is to clean up afterward. You don't need explosions. You need alignment. You don't need destruction. You need inevitability. You prefer moves that look boring in the moment and undeniable in hindsight. They'll call it sudden later. You'll know it was slow.